the attacks on Kyiv have been ramping up this month, but this is a very rare occasion when it was attacked during the day as well. The whole series of explosions rocking the centre of the city. You can see the puffs of little smoke up there. That's part of the missile systems being targeted in the skies. Mayor Klitschko actually posted a picture of a Russian missile that was on the streets of the capital. It doesn't look that grand, except you imagine that was in London. It will be a pretty significant event. This is the 16th day that attacks have been mounted against the Kyiv this month. Ukraine claims there's been 35 drone attacks, 29 shot down, but 40 missile attacks in the last 24 hours, of which 37 they claim they've shot down. But inevitably, these are residents that have been forced to go into the sort of underground system of Kyiv to get away from it, very reminiscent of World War II. It wasn't just here, though. It was also in Odessa. The port facilities at Odessa, down near you, were attacked as well. And also, unusually, there were the Ukrainians reported 5 aircraft taken out of action at Khmelnytsky, which is just up way away from the front line of the fighting. Interestingly, at Belgrade as well, up to just inside the Russian border, the Russian governor there said that there were several settlements that have been impacted by a lot of shelling this morning coming from the Ukrainian side. It is worth remembering that the Russian logistics, military logistics, often flows through Belgrade, so it could be to do with that.
Yeah, because right on the border. What do you know about the airfield attack?
Well, it's an odd one, this, because the Ukrainians rarely comment about Russian attacks on their military capability. But they did say that 5 aircraft were taken out of action. They said they were trying to restore the runway, and they're also trying to put out the fires that have been started in. They didn't say whether it's civilian or military. If you look in the region, there is a civilian airport there, but it looks really unlikely that the Russians would target a civilian airport, whereas there is a major Ukrainian Air Force military airfield in that region. It's home to the MiG-29s, which is the most modern Ukrainian aircraft, plus a few other fighters as well. Now, so it's most likely that's what the target was. It's quite difficult. Normally, military targets, you try and hide them or you try and move them away. You can't do that with an airfield. It's pretty fixed. So we've just taken a satellite picture here of the airfield in question. And there's several different ways of storing aircraft. One, if you look over your side, there's a big concrete pan there. That would you'd expect to see on a civilian airfield or a normal training aircraft. You can easily refuel jets, have them all together. The next level of protection, though, is berms. It's what's called berms, and you can see several examples here. It's a bit blurry on there, but if we look at here, there's big piles of soil which are try to protect the aircraft. They're generally taller than the aircraft. They don't withstand a direct strike, but they stop lots of damage being done. And if I step back here, we can look at the hardened aircraft shelters, which are the other example. In fact, here, there's several of them here. You can barely see them because they are steel reinforced concrete buildings covered in soil and then allow grass to grow over them. It allows the aircraft to hide inside, and unless you get a precision strike with a specific weapon with a delayed fuse, they're very safe. Now, I reiterate, we don't know exactly what has happened in Ukraine, but it is very rare for them to report that 4 aircraft are out of action in that region, and therefore it'll be really interesting to hear more news as it becomes available.
And perhaps looking at Ukraine's military targets, some might think they'd be struck a bit more, but they're not being.
No, they're not at all. I mean, I think what's interesting about how this war is developing is that Russians seem to have culminated in Bakhmut, and at the moment, what Russia should be doing is targeting military targets. But strangely, they're targeting Kyiv instead. Now, if it's the West, we'd be using satellite technology to find military targets and then use sensor-to-shooter as quickly as possible to target them. And it's really odd that Russia's not doing that. It's probably not doing that because it needs really professional teamwork to link satellite headquarters, etc., and they're just not good at doing that at all. Also, it appears that President Putin, who's not a military guy, is directing this war, and almost certainly he's just said bomb Kiev rather than actually bombing the Russian military capability. Regardless, I think what's really clear at the moment, though, is that the delays in Ukraine mounting their offensive, for whatever reason they're delaying, actually is providing Russia with an opportunity to target them and cause some significant damage. The Ukrainians will be really looking forward to getting going on their offensive.